Hello and welcome back. It's time for the last round of Swiss Vintage Championships. It's round 9, and we're going to be watching Paul Mastriano on the right of your screen against Roland Chang on the left. These guys are both 6-2. There are no top 8 implications left, but still should be an interesting match. Two very good players.
Vintage players also, they love prizes more so than other players I've found.
Fair, fair, yeah.
It's not as much glory in vintage tournaments, I think. So the prizes become more important.
Okay. So you really want 9th, 11th?
So I think, yeah,
it's a big difference from like 30 seconds.
I mean, I don't actually know what the prices are. But
there definitely is prizes down fairly deep.
Right, and I think the prizes are pretty good, so I think these guys are probably going to give us a good match here.
I expect as much. So Mastriano, he's part of the team Mean Deck circle of vintage deck builders and players, I guess more or less centered around Stephen Menendian, who's probably the guy that writes the most. But if you ask those guys, you ask the guys who play against him a lot who the best player is, most of them will point to Mastriano. Like, this is one of the best players in vintage. Roland Chang, no slouch himself. He's won this tournament in the past. He won it with a workshop deck, and guess what he's playing? A workshop deck.
Different version. No Goblin Welders this time around,
but Wasteland for Soul Ring and Chalice for 1. Chalice for 1, pretty good. Mastriano's playing this sort of Control-ish Oath deck, right? Same deck that Brian Damaris is playing. I believe they built it together. Chalice for 1, probably going to be pretty good against that deck. So yeah, Mastriano says no. Force of Will, discarding a Misdirection. Does not want to lose access to all of his 1-drops. All right. Paul's going to crack his fetch land. We do not have deck lists for these players yet, but we'll see if we can get those. Yeah, we have seen Mastriano's deck before, so it's Oath of Druids. It's got a Grizzlebrand and an Emrakul, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Grizzlebrand and Blightsteel Colossus.
Oh, Grizzlebrand and a Blightsteel, right. He's not on the combo plane, is kind of my point.
Yeah,
he's just like, right. I'm going to get large monsters and attack you, and my large monsters are going to do awesome things.
Right, and he actually has a Tinker in his deck.
So he can go get that Colossus. That makes sense. All right, so he cracked fetch land. I believe we're still on Roland's end step. Got a basic island because he sees the Wasteland on his opponent's side of the board. He knows that that deck is going to want to attack his mana. I'm sure he knows what Roland's playing. So basic island was the choice from the fetch land. Mystical Tutor is going to go get the Ancestral. Not quite as much value when it costs you the Mystical Tutor, but still pretty good.
It's interesting that because of the line that Roland took, he could have just tried to go Chalice on 0 and then still cast another threat.
But Paul had a turn. Like, Chalice 0, when your opponent's already had an opportunity to dump their Moxes into play, it's not nearly as good.
True, but it would have given him an ability to cast 2 threats in 1 turn.
Well, I don't think Paul forces Chalice 0. I mean, Paul forced the Chalice 1, so... I thought Chalice 1 was the right call. All right, now what does Roland have? I think I saw Trinisphere in there. I know I saw Sphere.
He's got a lot of action. He's got a
Lodestone
very
Golem.
threat-heavy hand.
He's got access to 5 mana. He's going to waste Forbidden Orchard, which Paul uses to give his opponent a creature.
Now
if there's an Oath coming out later,
right,
he wants
what
to...
does he have in his hand? I'm just wondering if
Ancient Tomb is his mana.
So he just chose to give him a creature.
Yeah. He wants to know. He wants to Oath eventually. He has an Oath in his hand. Yeah. He tapped his island to Ancestral, and then drew the Oath off the Ancestral, so he couldn't play it last turn. And now Paul is going to Brainstorm. Where are we? We're back on Paul's turn?
No, he declared an attack phase.
Oh, he declared an attack phase. Oh, he floated the mana off the Forbidden Orchard. That's why he
I was just making sure he had a spell to cast, if he was so bold that he was just going to give him a creature.
Wouldn't be crazy.
We got...
All right, so Roland declared an attack phase. Paul used his mana to Brainstorm. Ancient Tomb is Roland's land, so we're going to see Lodestone Golem, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of choices.
Could be Trinisphere. He can't go Trinisphere and Sphere.
He's going to go with Trinisphere.
He is just Trinisphere. Yeah, no, it's a good line. Trinisphere is way more disruptive than Lodestone Golem. I guess I'm mildly surprised at the Wasteland. Instead, he could have gone Trinisphere and Sphere of Resistance. I guess 3 mana, you still get to cast a spell, so this locks Paul out of any spell by Wastelanding.
Right.
Should be no surprise that Roland Chang knows the angles on this shop stack way better than we do.
Yeah. Though he will not be getting his second Ancestral Recall alternate art painting this weekend, unfortunately.
No, he will not. Well, I think he drew a workshop. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So he can go workshop. He's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. He can play both a golem and a sphere here.
Yeah, I mean, Paul's actually set up pretty reasonable for this matchup. I mean, he has a Hercules and a Nature's Claim and an Ancient Grudge main deck.
All in the main?
But I don't think he's going to get to do any of them this game.
There's Lodestone Golem.
Because now he's...
Oh, and there's Thorn of Amethyst. So now Lodestone Golem makes all non-artifacts cost 1 extra. Thorn makes all non-creatures cost 1 extra. So basically all the spells in Paul Mastriano's deck cost 2 extra at this point. And they have to cost it. They all cost at least 3 because of the Trinisphere. Yeah, no third land for Paul. I think Paul's plan here is to get what Hercules would cost him 4 mana at this point.
Right.
So that's what he'd like to do. And he does not have much time. Lodestone Golem hits pretty hard. And that random 1/1 is going to deal some damage too. So Paul's at 11. He's got 2 turns.
And the game's over. He's got double sphere resistance.
Yeah, game looks over.
And this is why...
Sphere says your all spells cost 1 extra,
right.
Including Roland is making his own spells cost 1 extra.
Right, now this is the workshop thing we hadn't seen yet today. That's
yeah, you remember last round when the workshop deck went flooded, screwed? This is the thing everybody lives in fear of.
Right, where there's just no card in Magic that counteracts this. You just can't cast a spell.
Anything.
It doesn't matter if every card in your hand says destroy target artifact. You can't cast any of them. And that's always been one of the frustrating things about building your deck in Vintage, where you can build your deck to be as anti-workshop as you want, and sometimes you just...
Sometimes they get this draw.
Sometimes they get this draw.
And this is through a Force of Will, too. He got his first thing, Force of Will, the Chalice. Tangle Wire. That was a pretty good draw from Roland Chang.
So that's another interesting thing about Roland. He has Cavern of Souls in his deck.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, I've seen that. I think that's good.
Right, but it's the first time we've seen that today as well, though.
You have to choose, I think, Golem or Construct. Creature types don't all match up. All right, so yeah, Roland's deck list. He's got the Lightning Greaves, Cobalta Forge Master Plan, 1 Duplicate, 1 Hellkite, 1 Wormcoil Engine, 1 Sundering Titan, 1 Blightsteel Colossus. So definitely on the fatty side of these workshop decks.
Right, and he's going to be bringing in 4 Grafdigger's Cage.
Yes, he is.
Stop both the druids. One interesting thing is, it doesn't matter in this matchup, but he's actually put his Crucible of Worlds in the sideboard. Does he have 1 main deck or just none?
I didn't see
a real
one.
lack of respect for the Workshop Mirror.
4 Wastelands in a strip.
Yeah, and Paul is going to be bringing in an Ancient Grudge, a Strip Mine, a Wasteland, 3 Nature's Claim. That's probably all that stuff is coming in.
Yep.
He's probably going to take out he's going to take out Misdirection for sure. Probably going to end 2 Mental Missteps, so that's 3 easy ones right there. Probably take out Merchant Scroll, even though you can get Hercules Recall with it.
A little on the expensive side.
It's a little on the pricey side against a deck where you can expect your spells to cost more.
So just the 1 Hercules?
He only has 1
No more on the board? Yeah, we've talked about how most players will dedicate half a dozen sideboard cards to this workshop matchup. Like half a dozen for Dredge, half a dozen for workshop, and then you get a couple spots left to work with. Paul's half dozen are 3 Nature's Claims, an extra land with the Wasteland, another extra land with Strip Mine, which doubles as Kill Your Workshop, and then the Ancient Grudge.
Now he doesn't have a basic forest, which would be a pretty nice thing to have in this matchup. He didn't build his deck in a way to support it, but...
Does he have any basics?
No, he has one island, but that's
it's
sometimes nice to have the basic forest to be able to you can reliably cast Nature's Claim.
It's still hard. I mean, it's hard to squeeze a basic forest into your list when most of your spells are below.
Well, some people's sideboard, like we saw a deck earlier that...
1 forest in the sideboard?
That a forest in the sideboard, even though it was essentially a blue-black deck, he chose to have a forest over a swamp.
So that he could Nature's Claim. No, you're right. That's exactly right.
You also occasionally will see the mountain to play Ingature, but Oath of Druids doesn't have that luxury.
You can't put Ingature into your deck.
Although, to be honest, you oath up an Ingature, it's pretty good against workshops.
It's not the end of the world. If you're at the point where you're resolving Oath, you don't need Ingature. The whole point of Ingot Chewer is to clear a path so you can afford to cast Oath of Druids for less than 7 mana.
So, does Roland have Phyrexian Metamorphs?
No. Yeah, Cold Vault of Forge Master is the... Well, I mean, plan A is just Lodestone Golem.
Sure.
I mean, these decks used to play Juggernaut.
Right.
Like, Juggernaut was plenty good enough. You got so much disruption in this deck.
They
5/3 for
Slash
4.
Panther.
Right, we saw Slash Panther in the previous round. So, the fact that Lodestone Golem is not just 5/3 for 4, but this incredibly just the perfect ability for this deck.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I mean, anyway, that's plan A every time, all
Mastriano
day.
was some aggressive lip balm application there. I don't think I've ever seen that in a feature match area before.
Anyway, plan B is Cold Off the Forge Master.
Well, one reason I was asking about the Metamorphs is just because oathing up Blightsteel. I was wondering if that could in any way backfire on Paul, but it looks
Yeah, duplicant is the answer. If he opens up Blightsteel, you want a duplicant, remove it from the game. Grow an 11/11.
I've seen games before where you oath up Blightsteel, and then they metamorph it, and then they also have Tangle Wire, and your Blightsteel just ends up never attacking, and you just die in one hit to theirs.
Funny. Paul draws up a hand. That looks like it's not good enough. Seems to be reaching for his deck. Yep, reshuffle.
Paul actually won. I believe he won the last big vintage tournament I played in.
Yeah.
Which was like either that or he won. There was one that had a $100 entry fee recently. Also, There was another one that was like the price for top 8 was like the Power 9. He won one of those 2 tournaments. I'm blanking on which one, but he's won a lot. I heard him once. He was a guest on the So Many Insane Plays podcast, and he was talking about how many Black Lotus tournaments he's won.
Wow.
This guy has won a lot of Black Lotuses. Like something ridiculous, like 8.
Jeez.
Like he's just won so many power cards over the years. Because a lot of the vintage tournaments, that's what, first prizes of money. It's a lot cooler
First
to win
place
a Mox.
is, a Mox, an Ancestral. All right, Ponder. I see a Brainstorm. Looks like he's keeping those.
See, Ponder is another card that I don't really like. I don't really like in this matchup, right? They have Chalice for 1.
Yeah.
It's like, it takes a whole turn to cast it, and then you hope to get something. It can just be really sluggish if there's a sphere resistance in play.
Fair. It's just a question of...
Right. You gotta...
What are you putting in instead? Right. All right, Roland's looking at his hand. I see Lodestone Golem. I see Mox, Workshop, Ancient Tomb.
Tangle Wire.
I
think a Cage as well.
So, how do you play out this hand?
You probably just go... Well, the fact that there's 2 Moxes in play, I mean, this is where you see the huge difference between being on the play and on the draw.
Right.
But,
all right, Emerald for Grafdigger's Cage. So he's not showing the fact that he has a Workshop. He's going to see if Mastriano wants to fight over Grafdigger's Cage before he tells him what else there might be to fight over, which is Workshop for Tangle Wire. So Grafdigger's Cage means creatures can't enter play from the graveyard or the library, so it shuts off Oath, and nothing can be played from the graveyard, so it shuts off Yawgmoth's Will. Tangle Wire locks down all Paul's permanents. He's going to play a land and shift the turn.
Roland's plan is he's still going to be able to cast some spells, so he's hoping...
Oh, yeah. And note that, so he stacks it, so first the Tangle Wire ticks down from 4 to 3, then he taps 3 permanents, one of which is the Grafdigger's Cage, which wasn't doing anything anyway, one of which is the Tangle Wire, which wasn't doing anything anyway. So he really only kind of had to tap 1 relevant permanent.
Right, so what he's trying to do here is, Paul was ahead on 2 mana because of the 2 Moxes.
Yep.
He's trying to basically delay the game until he has enough Sphere and Lodestone effects into play where those Moxes kind of don't count anymore. And then I think he's hoping that Paul kind of bricks on mana so that 2 turns from now, Paul maybe has 1 more mana in play, but Roland has 3 Sphere effects in play, and he's essentially behind.
And a 5/3?
And a 5/3.
And there's Lodestone Golem. So Workshop for 3, Ancient Tomb for 2, that does deal 2 damage, but the 5 mana turns into a Grafdigger's Cage, which is basically just another permanent to tap the Tangle Wire. And a Lodestone Golem, which makes non-artifacts cost 1 extra.
Here's where not having Metamorphs hurts. Like being able to copy the Lodestone or copy the Tangle Wire here would be pretty big play.
Forge Master would be pretty good too. A little more expensive.
Forge Master though is not great with Cage.
Oh wow, yeah. the cages do shut off the Forge Master's ability to go get, say, Blightsteel Colossus.
Yeah.
You can go get non-creatures, but you can't get the Colossus. Attack for 5. That's pretty good, too. He's still got a Thorn left. So he's already made non-artifacts cost 1 extra.
I would guess that Roland probably boarded in at least 1 Crucible here, which would be something you can get with Forge Master, even with Cage in play, that could
5.
potentially end the game.
There is Cold Oath of Forge Master.
But this is probably just pure beatdown.
Maybe. Cold Oath of Forge Master is what, 3/5?
Yeah.
So he can attack for 8, attack for 8, if he doesn't choose to activate the Forge Master. Yeah, it's a 2-turn clock.
I mean, but he could also just Forge Master and get another Tangle Wire.
Right. I mean, he can have a slower clock and the ability to use Forge Master.
Is Hercules? Yeah. So Hercules recall.
Pick up everything. This is Paul's upkeep because it was the only time he had mana. Tanglewire was pinning his mana
Paul's
down.
really hoping to draw Strip Mine.
Yeah, the Golem was making the Hercules cost 3 mana.
Alright, so if Paul had drawn Strip Mine there, one
To
of
get
his
the
Strip
workshop?
Mine would have been really insane.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Roland is going to be able to replay pretty much everything. He also drew a Mana Vault to get even more acceleration. It's essentially plus 2 mana, and it's food for the Forge Master.
Right, plus the Tangle Wire is not going to reset.
Right. The Hercules reset the Tanglewire. He kind of had to Hercules there, though.
Oh, yeah, he had to.
It was down to a 2-turn clock.
This is the power of the...
It's like he drew the best card in his deck against this strategy, but the Tanglewire meant he could only cast it on upkeep. The Workshop means it's going to all get replayed relatively quick.
well, really, he just needed to draw Nature's Claims.
Yeah.
Or Ancient Grudge. Ancient Grudge obviously would have been...
Yeah. There is the Tanglewire. Now here's 5 mana for the Golem, and does he have a mana left?
He's probably going to cast the Cage.
Yeah, there's the Cage, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, this is the games that are... This is what makes Workshops so good.
Yes. It's worked out for Roland 7 times, but he did not get the 8th win.
So we're going to Ancestral on upkeep.
Yeah, paying 2 to get it through the Golem, and doing it before Tanglewire taps everything. Could in theory respond with one of these. Like, he could respond with Mystical Tutor here. Does that get, like, Mystical for the Ancient Grudge?
I think he has to do that, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then next upkeep, he can Ancient Grudge.
Cast it twice.
Cast it twice. That's actually not bad.
Yeah, Tanglewire means all his permanents will be tapped before he draws the Ancient Grudge. He's not going to get to blow up the Lodestone Golem yet. He chose not to.
Nope, he's doing
Oh, he floated mana. Okay. Oh, wait, he can float the red through his draw phase?
No.
Oh, that doesn't work anymore. The mana clears at the end of the upkeep.
So next turn, he'll...
Right, it used to be that you could float mana from upkeep into draw, but that's not true anymore. All right, Ancient Grudge goes on top. Ancient Grudge gets
Paul
drawn.
actually has a shot here. Because...
He's got the Sapphire, which is not hurt by the Golem. It's an artifact, so it still has its same 0 mana casting cost. Mana Vault is going to deal a damage to Roland.
Yeah, Paul's
Shouldn't
actually
matter.
in pretty good shape. He's going to hit for 5. If it depends on whether if Roland has 2 spheres.
Right.
2 spheres would really be a problem.
Or Sphere Thorn is a problem, right?
Right. 2 sphere effects.
Right, the Ancient Grudge, each half is already at +1 from the Golem.
Well, if he kills the Golem first, the second half isn't.
Fair. He's got another Golem,
Oh, so...
so that's a Sphere effect. That makes the first half of the...
But he can still do both. It'll be 5 mana. Oh,
Sure.
no. 4. The first one
First
costs
one's
4.
4 if he plays
Right,
the Golem.
you're right.
And he also... I think he has a Thorn? He's got 5 mana. So that's not going to let him do Golem and Thorn, unless he's got a land I didn't see yet. Taps Ancient Tomb, takes 2, down to 11. He's actually been dealing a lot of damage to himself, but not very relevant in this matchup. He's going to play a second Cage, and then with 4 mana, he's going to play a second Golem. Yeah. He knows he's going to lose one of these, but because that Ancient Grudge is going to cost 4,
Yeah.
He's only going to lose one of them. He's going to get to attack again with the second.
Second Golem was big.
And he still has the Forge Master in his hand.
Because if he just had a sphere, he could kill the Golem and he wouldn't be taking 5 again.
Right. All right, Paul's upkeep. Tangle Wire's on the stack. He's going to tap 4 for Ancient Grudge. And bang, down goes Lodestone Golem. Tangle Wire taps the Underground. Draw phase. Flooded Plain.
Good draw.
Yeah, more mana is always good. Almost always good. He might get, no, he's not going to be able to afford the Brainstorm. He's got Time Walk, Mana Drain, Brainstorm. So to get that Ancient Grudge in his graveyard. So Tangle Wire is going to be at 2. That doesn't hurt Roland at all. He just taps the 2 cages.
Now, of course, you can use Forge Master. You can make the cages the artifacts you sacrifice to activate them.
You can.
So
yeah, if he had Lightning Greaves, for example, that might be worth it. Ooh, Strip Mine. I also think he's got Blightsteel in his hand, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
He's got Thorn, Forge Master, Blightsteel,
but he
Strip.
could sacrifice the 2 cages and something else to get Sundering Titan. Which would kind of end the game, I think.
First he's got to play the Forge Master.
PTQ players, that is time in your round. Again, PTQ players, that is time in your round. Active
It is an artifact, so the Golem doesn't make it any more expensive.
Now he's got to decide whether he wants to strip or cast Thorn.
PTQ players, time.
And he elects to cast Thorn. Looks like it resolves, so Golem crunches over for 5. Paul Mastriano is at 5. Tangle Wire is at 2.
So what he has to do is, the Ancient Grudge flashback costs 3.
Right, so that plus the Tangle Wire would tap 5 of his permanents, leaving him basically just the fetch land, which can't do anything through Thorn.
Right. It's pretty rough.
Looks like
oh wait, Grafdigger's Cage, he can't even cast Ancient Grudge.
Oh, of course.
Oh yeah. So,
right, Grafdigger's Cage shuts off the other half of Ancient Grudge, so Paul has to draw another artifact removal spell off the top, or he dies to just Golem Forge Master.
Yeah. Not that that really changes anything, since Paul Paul didn't have any options except trying to do that, but...
Right. It's a good point, though.
That actually makes me
I didn't
wonder...
even think of that with Cage. I forgot it turns off the back half of
right, which
Grudge.
actually makes me wonder, why did he tutor for that in the first place? We could have just got Nature's Claim.
Which is 1 cheaper.
Which is 1 cheaper, and that maybe could have mattered because he could have, it wouldn't have mattered.
Forge Master might have eaten the cages. I mean, there are lines where those cages go away.
Jake to stall. Jake to stall. Please, Portugal PTQ judge.
Tangle Wire's at 2. Pearl and Sapphire get tapped. Paul has to draw something to blow up one of those artifact creatures, or he just gets attacked.
He's got a Time Walk, right?
And a Brainstorm. Draws Vampiric Tutor. 4 mana for the Time Walk.
Fortunately,
+1 from the Thorn, +1 from the Golem.
Doesn't.
I mean, it just gets him a card draw.
Yeah.
Still a Tangle Wire for 2 over there. Basically, he's essentially cycling it for free. He's trying to figure out what he can Vampiric Tutor for. Does he have a card that kills both of those creatures? And the Vampiric Tutor makes it called off a Forge Master.
I mean, he can't even Yawgmoth's Will into Hercules because of Cage. So.
Yeah, Yawgmoth's Will does nothing versus Cage.
Yeah, this is tough. This is where the workshop decks just really... And this is an example of how the Lodestone Golem really put these decks over the top.
Yeah, it's fair. It's not just the disruptive, but it's also 5 power attacker. Taps 2 to Tangle Wire. Can't think of anything to Vampiric for that's worth paying 2 life for, so he draws a Floodplain. Which I
Now
guess
he's got to pay 3 to cast Brainstorm.
hard to imagine how this works from here. But may as well see what they are. Jace, Gaia's Blessing, Mox Emerald.
And, man.
Wow, Roland Chang just 2 blowout games.
To be honest, his draws weren't.
Roland's or Paul's?
So, Roland, game 1, he got Force of Will.
Yep.
And still won without an amazing draw. This game, although his draw was very good, he wasn't on the play. Like, these are the kind of games where you actually had a chance to beat Workshops and still didn't.
Right.
But yeah, this is an example of the cages were tough here too. Like,
Yes.
where he shuts off a lot of Paul's.
Paul's just making Roland play this out, right? This game is, unless he accidentally sacks the Lodestone Golem to Forge Master, he gets to just attack for the win here. It's not even bluffing a spell, right? Everything costs 2 extra. Maybe there's some corner thing that he might have that he's bluffing.
So is this main phase? Did he draw?
No, I think he's trying to figure out what to tap to Tangle Wire.
Point of the game where like you feel like you're so certain to win, you're just trying not to do anything stupid.
Yes.
Attention, PTQ players.
Like, just tap Cage and draw your card, right? Doesn't want to take the Mana Vault damage. Wants to activate Forge Master and not take Mana Vault damage.
What's he gonna get?
Second place with 23.
But can't get Sundering Titan because there's still a cage in play.
Maybe I misunderstand how the card works.
Third
No.
place with 23 points, Chris Lockman. In fourth
Doesn't
place
Cage shut
with
that off?
23 points, Tony Chiartana.
Yes.
In fifth place
Cage shuts
with
that off.
22 points, Nicholas Clift. In
Somehow
sixth
it's when you're
place,
trying to make sure you don't do anything too stupid that you're most likely to do something stupid. You start overthinking. So now it's just Sundering Titan fails to enter the graveyard, right? Sundering Titan fails to enter play, stays in the library, but the other 3 artifacts are
Is he
gone.
just letting him get something else?
Well, I mean, the way the card works, he tries to get Sundering Titan, it fails, and you play on. Like, this is a perfectly legal play. You are allowed to choose Sundering Titan, it just doesn't come into play.
Alright, and now he attacks for 5 and wins.
Right, he still attacks for 5 and wins.
Wow. If I had just not...
He did successfully avoid the Mana Vault
If you are
damage.
in the PTQ top 8, we would like to start relatively shortly. We are going to hold the top 8 over here in the vintage section. So please make your way over here.
Attack? Yep, good enough. I got nothing. Roland shakes his head. Jeez, what did I just do? Alright, I guess I still won. It's a lot easier to shake off when you win the game anyway. There's the handshake.
If you are,
Do we still have another
you
match?
wish to claim your prize, you may
So,
do so at the registration
Roland Chang wins. 7 and 2 should get him